Think Ahead essentially was formed in 2014, and this was a response to a government report which highlighted the lack of social workers available to support adults with mental health problems. So that really is the focus of Think Ahead. So the Department of Health and Social Care funded a new fast track programme, which is obviously Think Ahead, to recruit people to train in a faster than normal way to fill this gap within communities and within multidisciplinary teams. So that's the gap that Think Ahead was formed to help alleviate. Now, for those of you who are here, I can assume that you are somewhat interested in pursuing mental health or just learning a bit more about mental health careers. And hopefully you all kind of know much of these stats. So mental illness is clearly an urgent national priority, particularly now, particularly in the times of such uncertainty and times that can provoke anxiety too. And at least a third of children whose parents have mental health problems will experience mental ill health themselves. People with serious mental illness die on average 20 years earlier, and nearly 40% of all ill health is caused by mental illness. So hopefully this just highlights the importance of a programme like Think Ahead and other movements which are really helping to redress the gap within systems in society. So this just gives you an idea of mental illness. Now, moving on, I want to talk to you a little bit about what a mental health social worker actually does. So I have to admit, before I joined Think Ahead, I wasn't sure what a mental health social worker did. For me, the role of a social worker was tied intrinsically to working with children, to working with families. So this was something that I found was brand new to me. And actually, it was very appealing. And that's because a day in the life of a mental health social worker can vary. It can be in terms of building relationships. You might be providing guidance and talking therapies to a service user. It could be arranging support and care for a service user, ensuring their safety. So really considering safeguarding at the heart of a lot of the care that's provided. Another thing that's quite compelling is the fact that advocacy is really at the heart of a mental health social worker's role. Standing up for the service user's rights is truly important to the role of a mental health service social worker, as well as kind of building those relationships within community services and trying to strengthen those links within the community too. And social workers, obviously, as I've said earlier, they work within those multidisciplinary teams, but they play a distinctive role within mental health services. And that's kind of working alongside various practitioners to try to align views and do the best thing for the service users that they're supporting. They focus on people's social circumstances, so issues like relationships, employment and housing, and they work at 3 levels, and that's with individuals, with families and with communities. So hopefully you can see that the role of a social worker isn't just to look at a person's life from one prism or one lens. It really does consider that a person is a person who is complex. People have many facets to them, and looking at a particular issue in isolation may not be that useful in considering their mental well-being. So the next thing I'm going to do is going to pose you a challenge. And that is to step into the shoes of a mental health social worker. So just to kind of put it into a bit of context, consider our service user, who is the person in the middle, and we can call her Anu for today. And thinking about this service user in the middle, they have obviously many things going on at once. So if we consider her physical health, she is at danger of developing type 2 diabetes, according to her GP. Unfortunately, she lives on a poor diet, mainly consisting of takeaway meals. At the same time, in terms of her community, she's a devout Christian, but not going to church at the moment. She wants to get started with volunteering, but she's just not quite sure as to how to step out and get involved with things. Looking at her accommodation, unfortunately, she's at risk of eviction from her property. And her mental health carries a diagnosis of schizophrenia with severe paranoia, but doesn't take her medication that often. And then finally, looking at her family and friends, she lives with her adult son, a known drug user who's been recently released from prison, and her friendship group has reduced because of the issues with her son there. So hopefully you can see that this individual doesn't live in isolation with just looking at her mental health. She lives with many factors interplaying and connecting, and all having a kind of knock-on effect on each other, but also impacting her mental health and well-being overall. So the question I really want to ask you guys now is, if you were this person's social worker, what is the factor that you would consider first in trying to address some of the things that are going on for this service user? So what you can do is, in the chat box, you can just type in the header as to which factor you would focus on first if you were the social worker trying to empower this service user. Again, someone's got to be brave and go first. So we've got one person that says accommodation. Just to say, there is no right or wrong answer, so there's going to be no kind of shaming whatever you write. Somebody else has proposed accommodation and medication. Again, accommodation. What's really interesting is that the more I ask these questions to students from various universities, it's interesting that they tend to be really different, and some will focus on some factors, some will focus on another. So I can see that accommodation is really common here. Somebody else has focused on mental health. And again, we've got another one about physical health. Someone again has talked about family and friends. I would be interested to know if anybody is feeling up to just explaining a bit about kind of why they would propose the one they propose. You can either just unmute yourself or you can just pop it into the chat box. But it'd be really interesting to kind of hear your rationale, really.
I put physical health, but the reason why I chose that is because I think that can feed into the other ones very easily. Because obviously type 2 diabetes, that's just not great. No one wants that.
Yeah.
So through exercise alone, that the risk factors with that can be reduced. But also because you said she wanted to volunteer, I think it'd be really useful to go outside and exercise, not necessarily like exercise as in running, but just going for a walk, because then those social interactions and those experiences make her more confident then to maybe go into the community and be ready to volunteer.
Great, that's a really good suggestion. That's really well thought out, actually. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anyone else who'd like to kind of add anything?
I feel as though I chose family and friends because it provides a support system for that person, and their family and friends can help them to start getting their life together and assessing what's their problems and helping them with that.
Yeah, that's super helpful, actually. Yeah, so kind of getting that structure in place beforehand so that when you kind of move on to the other areas, that structure's already there. So I think thank you so much for your contribution as well. I think what's really interesting to see about this scenario is that this is any kind of service user that a social worker may find themselves working with, and actually sometimes there is no single answer that is the right thing to do. It really is about kind of building that relationship with a service user and actually just empowering that service user into delving deeper into the issues that they maybe want to consider first. So thank you so much for your contributions, and hopefully this gives you a bit of an insight into what I mean when I say that we look at a bird's eye view of somebody's life. We look at a holistic perspective of somebody's life and well-being. So moving on again, I would like next to focus on think ahead a bit more. So think ahead in terms of our vision, our mission and our values really does focus on wanting to see a society where everyone with mental health problems can flourish. And our mission is really encompassed in the programme that we provide, and we want to develop leaders who apply the skills and ethics of social work to empower people and to build mental well-being. So as I mentioned earlier, it is just working with individuals, working with families and communities across society. I would say that there's no time better than the present time to kind of think about kind of working on those scales with individuals. And then in terms of our values as an organisation, everything we do comes from a place of 5 core values, and that is in being inspirational, in being inclusive, in being genuine, in being determined, and in being effective. So that really hopefully does, it sits at the heart of everything that then goes forward from Think Ahead. Next, I would like to focus on actually thinking about the programme itself. So the programme works by, it lasts just over 2 years, and hopefully you can see obviously year 1, year 2 and the Summer Institute. So the Summer Institute I will start with first. So this lasts for 4 weeks, and usually the Summer Institute takes place at Middlesex University. So that's our academic partner, and that's the organisation that would give you all of your academic certificates and qualifications. And normally it is a residential period of training. So it's like a 4-week intensive academic period where you just, like, it's almost like a bit of a crash course and kind of learning as much as you can over that period of time, and then kind of moving on to the practical placements in years 1 and 2. In terms of COVID, how that will work differently is yet to be determined. So last year we conducted our Summer Institute entirely remotely. So that was just literally from the comfort of your own home. At the moment, we are just closely monitoring the situation and making a decision on the 2021's Summer Institute. Hopefully we'll come to a decision early in the new year. And then once you have completed the Summer Institute, you will move on to a practical placement. So this practical placement could be anywhere across England within an NHS trust or local authority team. And you will be training in a unit with other participants. And by the end of the first year, you will be qualified as a social worker. So it really is a fast track course. During the time on the Summer Institute and on year 1 of the programme, you will be receiving a tax-free bursary. So this can vary, as is written there, between £17,000 and £19,000, and that normally equates to between kind of £1,200 and £1,300 a month that you will receive tax-free to hopefully sustain yourself while you are on the programme. And then moving into year 2, you will still be in your practical placement, but you will now be working as a newly qualified social worker. So the placement that you've been placed in will be offering you a salary, and that's a salary that they would offer all of their newly qualified social workers. So as I have written there, that varies between £25,000 and £30,000 for the year. In your second year as well, you will be working towards getting your master's in social work from Middlesex University. And then in terms of kind of following on after the programme, so we have an alumni network which actually provides a unique pool of resources and mentorship after you finish the programme. So once you've finished, it's not just like, there you go, have at it. There is a lot of support available for you from Think Ahead by virtue of you being a Think Ahead participant. So that includes kind of workshops that we run, and we run them very regularly actually. You can be part of our newsletter, part of a mentoring network as well. We can kind of set you up with various conversations with people within the sector. And then in terms of careers afterwards, many will continue in working in their NHS trusts as qualified social workers, and then progress into senior roles like a senior social worker, an approved mental health professional, consultant social worker, or it can be kind of service leadership roles in senior management. So whereas others may kind of use their frontline practitioner roles to move into policy advisor roles, shaping government policy, or to advocate for social justice and human rights. So hopefully you can see that because there is such an emphasis on leadership training throughout the entire time of being on the Think Ahead programme, you really are set up for success in staying within the sector, but actually also venturing out into related fields. So moving on to the benefits of the programme, some of these are things I've touched on before, but the most important I will start with is the money side of things. And the Think Ahead programme is fully funded, so you don't have to pay anything at all. So the master's degree that you will be gained without paying for a master's degree at all. You'll be earning a full salary and a bursary throughout the entire time you're on the programme. And as I mentioned a bit before, there is leadership training ingrained throughout your time on the programme, which is actually distinctive to the Think Ahead programme. So it's something that you may not otherwise get in other routes to social work. And it will really kind of put you in the deep end, but a supported deep end where you'll be taking on challenge and responsibility and kind of ensuring people's safety, standing up for their rights much sooner than you might be doing on other routes to training. And you'll be connecting with experts. One thing that we benefit from is that wealth of network from people within the sector. So during especially your time on the Summit Institute, there are so many key speakers who will come and speak to you and share their insights about the role, share their time with you, as well as kind of obviously the participants on the programme who can be super helpful to learn from as well. Next, I am going to talk through the application process. So hopefully this little flow chart makes it simple to kind of see how it exactly works. The first thing naturally is to check your eligibility. On our website, which I will pop a link to at the end, there is an eligibility checker where you can check whether your qualifications and your past kind of certificates mean that you are eligible for our programme. Below, you'll be able to see our minimum requirements, and that is a 2-1 or above in your undergraduate degree. I'm not quite sure whether you are all kind of final years or whether there's a mixture of you. If you are in your final year and maybe you don't obviously have your degree classification yet, if you are predicted a 2-1, that should be fine for applying, so long as you kind of get your result before you start the programme. We ask that you have a grade C or above in GCSE Maths and English, and then we also ask that you have the right to work in the UK for the entire duration of the programme. If there are kind of question marks about these things, I'm happy to kind of consider these questions at the end as to whether you would be eligible, but there usually is a little bit of wiggle room there. So if you are kind of worried about some of these things, but you do want to apply, please do feel free to kind of stay on and we can have a chat about that. Once you find out you're eligible, you'll be able to take an online test. Now, this online test is a situational judgment test. So what happens is that we ask you we kind of pose various situations to you. We provide multiple choice responses, and having read the situation, you will choose the action that you would most likely take and the action that you would least likely take in that situation. And we don't require you to have any kind of particular experience within working within care settings or mental health settings. So hopefully the test is straightforward enough for you to kind of make your way through it safely, applying some common sense too, obviously. Once you've taken the online test and are successful, you will be invited to complete an application form online. So the application form is a mixture of written responses, and we also require you to record 2 video responses as well. So they will last 2 minutes each, and one is to talk about your motivation as to why you want to do the Think Ahead programme. And the second relates to a situation that we ask you to kind of talk us through how you might respond to this. If you are successful with the application form, you will be invited to attend an assessment centre. When I say attend, at the moment we are running these virtually, and I suspect we will be running them virtually in the new year, but we will let you know kind of what the decision is about that. With the assessment centre, there are a few activities that we ask you to take part in, just so we can kind of see your potential in action and in practice. If you are successful with the assessment centre, you receive a conditional offer. Obviously, once we've kind of made it through fulfilling the conditions attached to your conditional offer, you will then receive an unconditional offer and you are ready to get going with the programme starting. Now, in terms of how we're actually assessing you, it's important to say that we are looking at 7 attributes to assess you the entire time on the programme. So these 7 attributes are leadership, adaptability, motivation, relationship building, communication, problem solving, and self-awareness. In terms of these attributes, these are the only criteria that we use to assess you the entire time throughout the application process. So when it comes to the application form, you can see that each of the questions are aligned to one of the attributes, and that will be made clear to you. So you can really see what it is we're looking at and what we're trying to get to in terms of asking that question. We don't look at anything else. We don't look at your kind of personal details. We don't look at the things that you've done in terms of your work experience. We don't look at your qualifications at all throughout the entire process. When we consider the application forms, we actually do so blindly. So all we see are your written responses and your videos, and that is it. So any of your kind of concerns about maybe your qualifications or where you're hoping to work, none of that comes into play at all. The same thing applies at the assessment centre. This is the only criteria we use. On our website, there is a lot more detail, and there's kind of a bit of a paragraph about each of those. So hopefully if you have a look at that on the website, you can see kind of what we mean when we say leadership, for example, and just kind of get an idea of each of those. So just to give you a brief explanation, in terms of leadership, it really is looking at the ability to kind of act as a professional role model, to demonstrate initiative and to engage others and to enable others to achieve their goals. So it really is that empowerment there. Looking next at adaptability. Adapting is so important as a social worker because things are changing all the time, and it's that resilience and that flexibility in changing circumstances and working under pressure and being able to deal in an environment where there are uncertain or unexpected outcomes. Looking next at motivation, this is really important. This is looking at your personal commitment to transforming the lives of people with mental illness, but also the understanding of the positive impact of social work and think ahead. So if you are thinking of applying, the questions that you might want to ask yourself with regards to your motivation is why do I care about mental health, working within mental health? Why particularly is the role of a social worker important, and why is that the way that I have chosen to kind of make a difference and to work alongside people with mental health problems? And why think ahead? So really considering there are many kind of routes into qualifying as a mental health social worker. Why is the Think Ahead programme most appealing to me? Relationship building next. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward and pretty intuitive, but it really is that ability to kind of demonstrate empathy and respect for all individuals and to kind of build relationships and understand people's motives and perspectives. Communication. This is the ability to collaborate with and influence a wide range of people. So that's both in person and in your written communication, and that's really important as a social worker. Next, we've got problem solving, which is the ability to objectively analyse situations, and that's using kind of clear evidence and judgment to generate effective solutions. So when I mentioned the kind of bird's eye view that a social worker takes, and kind of problem solving ties in very naturally with that, and trying to work efficiently, work to empower the service user that you're working with, but also to kind of weigh up alternative courses of action and to consider which is the best action to take. And finally, self-awareness. So really just the ability to understand and reflect critically on your personal development, but also on how your actions affect others. And social work is a really reflective kind of sector and career to choose. It really does require that constant reflection on your actions, on your professional development, on your interactions with service users, and just to kind of work continually towards improving your practice. So that's kind of everything that I wanted to go through before kind of opening up to questions. It is worth me adding that applications are open at the moment. We are receiving a shed load of applications at the moment. So if you are interested in applying, the application process is visible from our website, which is posted there. That's thinkahead.org. You can also pop us an email. So that's recruitment@thinkahead.org as well. You've got our number there, and then obviously our social media, and you can contact us from there.